Good morning. My name is Stephen Heath. I am Technical Director at Knauf Installation. We are an installation manufacturer operating 3 factories in the UK and over 30 worldwide. Unlike the suggestion in the programme, I do not work for sister company Knauf Energy Solutions, but I was part of the development team that launched the service they are now offering. For clarity, that service includes before and after retrofit fabric performance measurement and retrofit specification services. Their technology is also part of the SMETA program that I think others are talking about around my presentation. However, I want to focus this presentation on the bigger challenge, the challenge that yes, fabric performance measurement technologies will be part of resolving, but more, what are the current incumbent technologies that need to be replaced, displaced, if we are to transition our housing stock to a low carbon one. The challenge at hand then is persuading a good chunk of our 27 million plus homeowners to act on retrofit, to install measures, to buy services that ultimately turn their homes into lower zero carbon ones. To our mind, these real performance technologies, the capacity to measure home efficiency is not an end in itself. It is more about correct risk allocation. We need to move the risk of a retrofit away from occupants, risk of a bad outcome, from higher than expected bills in terms of electrification of heat, away from the occupant and onto the supply chain, and ideally provide that supply chain with a feedback loop to show they have delivered a good job and therefore manage that risk. If we view my point through an academic lens, we're looking at George Akerlof's market for lemons theory or thesis that he published back in the 1970s, won him a Nobel Prize. His central thesis was, if there is no route for the buyer of a product to ascertain the quality of that product, his paper used second-hand cars as a prime example. If there is no route for the buyer of that product to ascertain the quality, then the seller has no motivation to sell a higher quality product, because ultimately they will not be able to get a higher return, higher value for that higher quality. He suggests there will be 2 outcomes. Buyers will be reluctant to engage with that market. There is no incentive to sell higher quality products. Therefore, the market will shrink or diminish rather than grow. I go back to the key challenge. We need to persuade 27 million plus owners of homes, or a good chunk of them, to act. We need those markets to grow rather than shrink. So correct risk allocation is the key. So what does a de-risked retrofit service look like from a homeowner perspective? Well, it's, to our mind, one that sells proven or measured outcomes, perhaps even assured outcomes as a service, rather than simply selling product installs like a loft or cavity insulation install. So from a homeowner's perspective, they would ring up a service provider. Probably the first step is that service provider installs a sensor suite supported by machine learning that ticks away to establish current energy efficiency. If that current energy efficiency is deemed lower than desired, a cost optimal retrofit is proposed. That the success of that retrofit is then measured and quantified, and again perhaps even assured by the service provider, so the homeowner has bought that proven outcome or even assured outcome. Where electric heating is proposed, you would support your smart fabric measurement service with a smart thermostat service, which is choosing when to charge the now efficient fabric with heat to support the homeowner to heat the home away from peak electricity times. More on that later. There's a sentence there on where I believe the independent should sit in terms of measurement as well. I know it's a live topic and it might come up later, so I just wanted to get that sentence on record. At the outset, I mentioned that we, or rather sister company Knauf Energy Solutions, are offering the type of services I've outlined, the type of outcome, measured outcomes, rather than installing products. Over in Belgium, available to social housing providers with a fairly decent pipeline of work in their first 12 months of activity. A reasonable challenge if we or they have solved the engineering challenge of measuring fabric efficiency of homes, Why aren't we offering that service more widely? We are planning a launch. They are planning a launch in the UK, but in short, the challenge is that that service will have to compete against incumbent processes rather than have the wind in their sails. And that's something that we're trying to lobby to change. So what do I mean by incumbent technologies? Less about the one that is playing out in the newspapers. The natural gas boiler will likely be usurped by one of the three technologies on the right hand side. Seems the lead candidate is probably electric heat pumps, so we're looking at electrification of heat. However, there are other incumbent processes or technologies that we believe need to be addressed to fully support the type of service propositions I've outlined. The first process that needs to be replaced is the theoretical or desktop exercise to calculate home efficiency that underpins the UK Energy Performance Certificate. It was a useful tool, but ultimately it will not address our key point of moving risk away from a new home buyer or a buyer of a retrofit onto the supply chain delivering that product. So again, we look at Akilov's market for lemons. There's no way for the homeowner to ascertain the quality of the product they're buying. Government recognise this. They've published the EPC action plan that includes a transition to these measurement technologies, the SMETA programme and its follow-up technology validation exercise that I think is proposed for this winter has mapped out this transition. Just can't happen soon enough. There isn't a timeline for it to happen. We'd very much like to see that timeline. Okay, the next technology that needs to go is the trusted thermostat. It's done a great job for 50 years, but if we are to electrify heat, which seems government's chosen path of action, then there is no level of renewable energy that will exist on the grid that we can build in any reasonable timeline that can heat all of our 27 million homes at the same time the current gas boilers do. So smart thermostats need to support smart energy efficiency fabric measurement in delivering a de-risked experience for the occupant. Here's that same theme, whereby an occupant sets what comfortable temperatures they're happy with, but the smart thermostat is then choosing time of use tariffs to heat away from those peak times to ensure that the occupant gets a comfortable home, but at the lowest feasible cost. So in this scenario, the walls, the floor are now being used as a heat storage or heat battery because that efficiency enables it, and hopefully enabling the heat pump to realise its maximum coefficient of performance as well. A great paper by the UK Energy Research Centre quantified the size of the challenge in terms of electrifying heat. They looked at the winter of 17-18 when the beast from the east hit. The dashed blue line represents a median week that winter, but of course if you're going to electrify heat you need enough capacity to meet your maximum week. That solid blue line is the beast from the east. The power draw in terms of gas primarily for heat was fourfold that of electricity at the time. So if you are to electrify heat, you can't have that usage profile. You cannot have 27 million people turning heat on at the same time. You need some smart thermostats to manage that heat use away, and you need smart fabric measurement to ensure that an occupant can safely heat their home away from those peak times, yet not lose that heat, still remain warm and comfortable through those what will inevitably be expensive hours of electricity demand between about 5 and 8 in the morning and early evening. So back to Akilov and his market for lemons. He identified a route out of this market failure by the development of a technology or technologies that would inform the buyer of a product that they had bought a quality product. It would also allow the seller of that quality product to earn a suitable price for that higher quality. So yes, measurement of fabric efficiency is key, but it's got to rise to Akilov's challenge. Does it address the mismatch in information between buyer and seller of retrofit? and buyer and seller of low carbon new homes.